Good morning, students. As we have already done chapter second's half part, that is the principles of management. Now, today I'll be discussing the second part of the chapter, which is the scientific management. And let us start with the topic of scientific management. The concept of scientific management was given by F.W. Taylor, that is Frederick Winslow Taylor. He was an American engineer and he was, insisted on the introduction of scientific methods of management. That is, he insisted that the companies, the organizations should use the new and scientific methods of doing management in the organization. That is the reason he is also known as the father of management. He basically starts his career as a laborer and rose to the position of chief engineer in the same company within a span of 6 years. So, he has contributed a lot in the scientific management, which basically covers two things, that is, the principles of the scientific management and the techniques of the scientific management. So, today we'll be discussing in detail these two topics, and that is principles and techniques of scientific management. But before doing these two topics, we should know what is scientific management. So, scientific management is basically the application of scientific methods to the problems of management. As we have done the various principles of management which were given by Henry Fayol, now that person was dealing in the company by applying those principles. But now the scientific management basically focuses on using such methods which helps in solving various problems of the management. So I hope the meaning is clear. It can be explained by F.W. Taylor by using one of the definition, that is, scientific management means knowing exactly what you want men to do and seeing that they do it in the best and the cheapest way. That is, you know what you have to do and what your workers have to do, and then you simply direct them to do the same task, and then you see how they are doing it in the best and the cheapest way. This is what scientific management focuses upon. I think the definition is very much clear to all of you. Now we will be doing the principles of scientific management in detail. The F.W. Taylor have given the 4 principles of scientific management. Number 1 is science, not rule of thumb. As the name of the principles is clearly defining science, that is, we should follow the scientific methods, not the rule of thumb. That means we should not follow the things which are prevailing in the society or in the organization from so many years. Understand? Let's do this in detail. That is, this method simplifies that we should replace the old rule of thumb and hit and miss methods to perform a particular task. Rather, we should go for the scientific ways of doing a particular task. For example, Taylor suggests that work assigned to any employee should be observed, analyzed with respect to each and every element and part and time involved in it. That is, for example, let me explain the same with one of the example I have explained earlier, that is the making of dice, that is the wooden dice in the organization. For example, the manager decided that on their personal judgments that this much dices we have to make in 2 hours. For example, we have to make 10 dices in 2 hours, right? And they decided this on the basis of their personal judgments. But Taylor suggests that the standard time for the job should be based on the scientific inquiry, and then the scientific output should be determined. Only after determining both of these things, the company, the manager, should decide the number of dices should be made, which should be made in that particular time, that is 2 hours. I hope the example and the point of science, not rule of thumb, is very much clear to all of you. Next principle is harmony, not discord. So, what is harmony? Harmony means to work in a peaceful environment, and discord means that there should not be any, and discord means misunderstandings. So, as we know, in every organization, there are 2 groups, that is workers group and management group. And workers always feel that they are underpaid or overburdened, while management feels that workers are good for nothing. So, when both will be having this kind of attitude for each other, there cannot be harmony in the organization. So, Taylor suggests that this kind of attitude should be replaced with mutual trust and cooperation between the workers and the employers. So, we require a complete change in the attitude of the workers and managements towards one another, from competition to cooperation. When both will be having this kind of positive attitude towards each other, only then the organization can run successfully. Let's take an example for this. For example, every worker or the employee is working in the organization to earn good salary, good wages. Same way, every management of the company is working to earn good profit. If they are having a positive attitude towards each other, what will be there? Workers will produce maximum, in result of which they'll get salary, they'll get bonus, because in that case, when they are producing good, the organization will be having higher profits. By doing this, what will be there? The profits will be earned by the organization, and ultimately the bonus will be earned by the employees of the organization. Good salary will be earned by the workers of the organization. So they should have a positive attitude towards each other. I think the principle of harmony and discord is very much clear to all of you. That is, third point, cooperation, not individualism. Very much clear from the name. Cooperation means with the help of each other, we can attain a particular objective. Individualism means that no person should or work for his or her benefit, right? So this principle states that everything in the organization, that is every work in the organization, should be carried on in cooperation with each other, with mutual confidence and understanding for each other. Principle states that it is only through the cooperation of the management and the workers through which the goals of the organization can be achieved efficiently, right? Let's take an example for this. It states that if the organization wants that the workers should perform more efficiently, then the management should assign them the work according to their interest. For example, if one has done MBA in finance, he should not be placed in the position of HR, that is human resource manager. He should be placed at the position of finance manager. Only then he'll be able to perform the duties very efficiently, because he is placed at the right job. That is, placing the right person at the right job. Only then cooperation will be there. No individualism will be there in the organization. I think this point is very much clear. So, moving on to the next and the last principle, that is development of workers to their greatest efficiency and prosperity. This principle also states the same thing that was in cooperation and individualism, that right person should be placed at the right position. When they will be placed at the right position, as explained earlier, they perform good, right? Plus, when firstly the organization should place them at the right position, right? And later on, when they are working, various type of trainings, that is for their particular job, should be given to them according to their capabilities and nature of work. This will ultimately or automatically results in the efficiency and growth of the company and its employees. I think all the principles, that is the 4 principles of scientific management, are clear to all. And so moving on to the next topic, that is the scientific techniques of Taylor. The Taylor has given 7 techniques of scientific management. So let's start with the first point, that is the functional foremanship. Under this point, Taylor suggested that the techniques of functional foremanship in order to improve the quality of supervision and control of work. In this scheme, basically, the task of the supervision is divided into several specialized functions, and each function is entrusted to a specialist foreman. That is, in this technique, basically, the Taylor is focusing on separating the planning and the operations department. That is, we have done the levels of management, that is, in which there were 3 levels, top, middle and lower level. Same way, in this point, he says that 2 things will be there, that is the planning department and the production department. In planning department, basically, as we know, the the employees or the employers who will be taking decisions, that is making objectives or those things, will be there, and in operations the persons who will be performing the work will be there, right? So in this departments, that is two departments are there, that is planning and production department, and under this four basic heads will be there who will be working under each department. Let's understand the eight functional experts which are suggested by Taylor. Two departments, that is planning and production, and in each department four clerks will be there. Let us start with the planning department. Under planning department, four clerks who will be there are listed as follows. Number one is route clerk, instruction, second, third is time and cost clerk, and fourth is disciplinarian. Let's discuss these points in detail. Number one, the route clerk. So he is the person who basically plans the sequence of operations, that is how the particular activity will be carried on, and instruct the workers about it. Next is the instruction card clerk. He is a person who will prepare the detailed instructions for the workers regarding the different aspects of the work, such as tools, etc., to be used in the techniques or the work the workers will be performing. That is, he is also going to determine the proper speed to be maintained while doing the work or doing the task. Number third is time and cost clerk. Time, as we know, he is the person who will be deciding how much time will be devoted to all the jobs, all the activities, and accordingly the pay or allowance will be given to the workers. Also, he maintains the cost records. Cost records, that is how much cost is used or conducted or used by the organization for performing a particular task. Next is disciplinarian. As the name suggests, that is discipline. He'll check the discipline in the organization, and in case any breach of the discipline, that is agar koi person is not performing the duties accordingly, that is he's breaching the discipline, so then this person will be taking the name of that particular worker or the employee. So I think the four persons clerks are very much clear to all under the planning department. The second head, that is the production department, the persons under these are: number one, the speed boss. Very much clear from the name. He'll ensure that workers are performing their job as the speed which were given at the speed which was decided by the instruction card clerk in the planning department, that speed boss will be maintaining that particular speed is being followed or not while performing the task in the organization, right? Next is the gang boss. Gang boss, he is the person who is responsible for assembling and setting up all the tools and machines in the organization, and he ensures that the persons are performing the good work on those machines very nicely and very well. Next is the repair boss. Very well much clear from the name. Repair means the person who is responsible for repairing the machines if there is any kind of problem in that particular machine. Last is the inspector. Name clarifies, he is the inspector, and he'll inspect the work done by the workers, and he'll check the quality as being given, the quality standards being given by the planning department. He ensures that the quality is being matched with the planned one or not. So I think all the 4 points under the production department is very much clear to all of you. So this was functional foremanship. I think this point is very much clear to all of you. Now I want to tell you one more point over here, that you have done unity of command in the FUELS principle, which suggests that there should be only one boss. So this functional foremanship is basically violating that principle of FUEL, because under this there are two heads, that is the planning department and production department, which simply telling us that two boss can be there in the organization for a particular task. So functional foremanship is violating that particular unity of command of FUEL. I think this is clear to you all. So next, moving on to the next point, next technique, that is standardization and simplification of work. This technique states that setting of the standards for different factors. In simple words, we can say that we should maintain the standards in respect of, we can say, tools and instruments, material, working conditions, and methods. So, standardization will help us to know whether we are able to, achieve the things we have been, we were thinking that we'll be doing this task, or we can say that standards will help us to know whether we have done the things properly or not. Let's take an example for this to understand it very clearly. For example, in plus one accountancy, you have done the chapter of depreciation. There were two methods of doing depreciation, that is the straight line method and other was written down value method. The organizations basically perform or can use these two methods for depreciating a particular asset. For example, there are two organizations, A organization and B organization. And A organization is using the method of written down value method, and other organization is using the method of straight line method. So, standardization of method simplifies that if A is using written down, then he has to use the written down value method for depreciating for all number of years the company is being run, right? This will help us to know that particular asset, that with how much amount that particular asset is being depreciated. So that is basically the standardization of methods. Same way we can set the standards in other things, that is the techniques of production, the machines, the product, etc. I think this is clear, that is standardization is clear to all of you. Next is simplification. So very much clear from the name, it refers to putting an end to the unnecessary types, weights, qualities, sizes, etc. For example, let us take an example so that it will be very much clear to all of you. For example, a company named Y is producing shoes, and we know the shoe sizes are, suppose for example, are like 32, 34, 36. So this is what simplification. What if the company will start producing this size 31, 32, 33, 34, 35? So what will be there? They have to install the machines accordingly. They have to, do the task accordingly, which will not only increase their workload, it can also result in losses also. So simplification technique, it suggests that the company should produce or simplify its manufacturing ways. That is, that we have taken the example of shoes, so that is which basically simplifying the making of the sizes of the shoes. So I think point is very much clear to all of you. Now moving on to the next topic, next point, next technique, that is the method study. In this point, clarified that in doing, that is to do a particular task, we find out the one best method of performing that a particular task so that the cost can be minimized. So in this, the person, let's take an example for method study. Suppose I'll take the example in your school only, so that you will understand this point very clearly. For example, your plus one class, this is a place where the organization is storing its raw material, right? And in nursery wing, where nursery classes are there, the production place is there, that is machines are kept there. So we have to do the production, we have to take the raw material from your plus one class and move on that raw material to the nursery class. What will be there? There will be wastage of the resources, wastage of time. So to avoid this, what can be done? Your raw material can be placed in plus one class, and the production area can be your activity hall. This will help in reducing the time and the cost involved in the transportation. So this is known as method study. Next point is fatigue study. Fatigue is basically refers to we can say aram. We need rest while doing the task or while doing the work. So in fatigue study, the tailor is suggesting that how much intervals of rest can be there in the whole day in the working hours of the organization. So he suggests that there should be rest period in the organization, because the workers need rest after a certain period of time. right? Let's take an example of yours only. Suppose after first period, fruit break is there, in which you take fruit. This is basically the first break you'll be getting for 10 minutes. Next, after fourth period, your recess is there. What does that mean? You need to have your lunch, which will basically, after 4 periods, after the recess, you'll be able to study for those 4 periods, so that you'll be able to have a proper study for the next 4 periods. You are given recess. After 4 periods, what is there? The school closes. This helps you to take the proper rest in between, that is the fruit break, the recess, and then the final chutti, right? In the organization, same way in the organization, what is there? Firstly, they get a tea break, then lunch break, and then finally they have to leave the organization. This is what the fatigue study suggests us. I think this point is very much clear. Next, moving on to the next technique, that is the time study. This time study, as name suggests, that there it involves determining the standard time which will be required to complete a particular activity. For example, that you get 3 hours to perform your paper, to do your paper. This is what 3 hours is, what the standard time, right? Same way in an organization, to perform a particular activity, let's take an example of that dice valley example, in which suppose the time is set that for making one dice you have been given for example 1 hour. This is what the standard time. And if while performing the task, what is there? The person is able to perform the task in 45 minutes. Then 15 minutes will be what? He saves 15 minutes for performing that, or for producing that particular dice, right? So time study focuses on determining the standard time to perform a particular task. I think the point is very much clear. The next point is motion study. In motion study, it involves the analysis of various motions of the body or the machine to perform a particular job, right? For example, suppose 2 destinations are there, that is A point and B point, and the person has to take the bricks from point A to point B, and in between 1 meter distance is there, and a person stops for 3 times while covering that particular area distance. In that point, only 1 motion is required to take rest, but that person is taking 3 motions, which is basically the wastage. So in motion study, we determine how many rest intervals will be there. That is 1 point. As I told you, 1 in rest intervals is enough. So he'll be taking rest for 1 time. But if he is taking the rest for 3 times, this is what 3 motions are there, 2 motions which is unnecessary. So motion study help us to know how many motions can be there in performing a particular task. Explain one example for this. Suppose I'm sending one of you from class +1 to suppose class to the reception, right? Suppose I'm sending person Y from class +1 to reception, and while moving to the reception, the Y met one of his friend, and he started talking with that particular person, that particular friend, for 5 minutes. He talked with him. Then moving on again, he met another friend, right? So after meeting that particular friend also, he went to the reception, he do that task given by the teacher, and he went back to the class. So there were no motion which were required in between the +1 class and to the reception, but he takes 2 motion. That is what? Unproductive motions, which should be deleted. So this is basically what motion study, right? I think it is very much clear to all of you. Next point is differential piece wage system. Very much clear from the name, that is different wages for different number of efficient and inefficient employees. That is, if one person is performing his duty or work in a good manner, that in a right way, the person will be getting the wages accordingly, and one person is not performing his duties very well, then he'll be given wages accordingly, right? Let's take an example for this. Suppose the standard task is fixed at 10 units and the rates are ₹60 per unit for workers who produce 10 units or more, and rupees 40 for workers who produce less than 10 units. So now if A produces 11 units, then he will be getting 60 into 11, that is rupees 660 for his work. And if B is producing 9 units, then he will be getting 40 into 9, that is 360. So why A is getting 660? Because he is producing 11 units, and as told earlier, if 10 units or more, then 60 per unit. So he'll be getting 60 into 11, that is 660 unit. And if B is producing 9 units, so it is less than 10. So what is the money or per unit cost? That is rupees 40. So 40 into 9, that is rupees 360. I think this differential wage system is very much clear to all of you. The last technique is mental revolution. So in this technique, the tailor is saying that the good relations between the workers and management. This is same as harmony not discord principle given by F.W. Taylor, in which it was like क्या था उसमें that workers and management should have a positive attitude towards each other. Only then they'll be able to produce or results in a good manner, right? So he suggests that the workers and management should have a mutual trust and confidence with each other. They should have a scientific attitude towards the problems in the organization, so that the organization can work efficiently in the environment which is prevailing in the society. So this is basically mental revolution. So we are done with all the techniques of F.W. Taylor. I hope the techniques and principles given by F.W. Taylor in scientific management is very much clear to all of you. If you'll be having any doubts in the principles of Fayol, in the principles of F.W. Taylor, and in the techniques of F.W. Taylor, please note it down, and I'll be taking the doubts through the group only. Right? Thank you.